everybody. If we could get started. Welcome to the Devon Education Forum. And we will start with apologies for absence and welcome new members.
Thank you, Chair. So we have apologies from Primary Academy Rep and also Councillor Julian Brazil, who is newly appointed leader of Devon County Council and also the Cabinet Member for Children's Services Education. Unfortunately, as he's new to the role, he's a prior engagement today, but he does have all the other forum dates in his diary. Thank you.
And also welcome to Councillor Vick. And
okay. Sorry, so Councillor Denise Bickley is our new Children Cabinet Member for Children's Services SEND.
And also Lorraine Mitchell, Secondary Academy. Here or?
I think she's
okay, so
she's
not
missed a couple of meetings recently for the health.
okay. Right, thank you. Are there any declarations of sorry? So which one? Sorry. Oh, Jill, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I've just had an email from Nikki Glue to ask for her apologies to be given. She's a DAG, I think she's primary representative academies.
Okay, thanks very much. Noted. Are there any declarations of interest?
That's over and above any general interest arising from being a teacher or a governor.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the minutes. You've all had the minutes the last meeting. Are you happy? Is there a true and correct record? And again, are there any items requiring urgent attention? I don't believe.
No, thank you, Chair.
Matters arising from last meeting, report back on issues raised with Cabinet. Don't know if anything under that.
Chair, I think
Yes.
for future meetings we'll have more to discuss under that.
Yeah. Yes, it's not the time.
The next item, I think we'll pick up some F40 issues that kind of overlap with both items 5 and 6, but take them under number 6. Thank you.
Okay, so item 6, which is update cabinet minute and support from Devon MPs bearer funding. It says here, officer presenting, Jack Newt.
Morning, everybody. So, colleagues, with regards to this item on fairer funding, where this comes from, this item is around us collectively in Devon, ensuring that we are collaborative in the way that we lobby politically, both internally, externally, to central government, to local government, and ensure that we're all on the same page around fairer funding for Devon's education system. The update is as it stands is that collaboration is improving. We are really clear with our MPs. We've issued our view that we need to be collaborative. We've issued briefing notes to be more united in our lobbying, and we've also been clear through DSLS and through this forum that we need to work together to improve the funding situation. The next steps The next steps are how we do that. Sorry, colleagues. The next steps is how we do that in a more cohesive way. And sorry.
I'll finish. So there's been lots of work going on, particularly from the chief exec of the council, Donna, around working with MPs. We know that that work is happening locally across Devon as well. And actually, with the change in cabinet in Devon gives us a real opportunity then to reinforce that message to national government around fairer funding for Devon. So we've done some briefings for MPs and we'll continue to do that. And we need to probably join that up better in terms of the work with schools. So we know you're saying the same thing as we are, but we don't do that together. We do that in separate spaces. So I think we've got more work to do to just bring ourselves together around that message with one voice. So there's some work that we've done, but I think the message is let's try and bring that together and strengthen that voice in Devon around the funding situation.
Just to add on to that as well, in middle of July, I'm going up to London to attend a finance management research team workshop with the F40 to discuss plans on looking at suggested formula for workings for both schools and the high needs block for so it's bringing all together a group of the councils along with our school as well to how we can lobby in that direction as well, saying what we believe is the correct sort of formula to directions as well. So if there's anything there that people want to bring in as things that we can put towards the consideration, that'd be useful.
Chair, I think also the F40 are doing an event on the 1st of July as well for drop-ins for MPs to try and raise awareness with them.
And obviously that F40 group is vital for us. This is where those 40 local authorities that are together, that sharing the same issues, that drop-in is important and a key part or a key strand of how we need to collaborate together. So colleagues, apologies for that first bit. It's not like me to be short of words, and so thank you, Kelly, for stepping in.
Thank you. Any? I'll go to. You haven't got your name up. There wasn't one. Oh, okay. Sorry, you're Chris. Yeah, Chris, that's it. I know who you are. If you'd like to go first, and then Alex, and then Gemma. She hasn't got her name up either.
I know.
Thank you, Christopher. It's the what is by continuing to work alongside us, and what we've been trying to do both in this forum, and by we I mean all of us. What we've been trying to do in this forum and out there with colleagues is to show that we are in this together and working. So the answer to the specific answer to your question is for us to be sharing with you and you to be sharing with us what we are briefing, and ensure that our message, as far as it possibly can be, is coordinated. Because the simple thing of asking for more money, for example, it won't work, and we know this both from our experience, and we also know this from talking to our Department for Education colleagues. It won't be about that. It will be about the focus on how we're going to use our resources better and where we need more funding and how we're going to do that. And by showing that we are improving our alignment in our strategic objectives, in our care for children in their communities and all of those things, the more we nail that message down, then the stronger our voice is going to be, and the more opportunity there is for us to get fairer funding in Devon. So the answer, Christopher, is using our forums. And so colleagues, one thing around DSLS and DCC services is that we're both moving into the locality so that we can be closer aligned with the needs of our communities, whether they're rural, coastal, urban, etc., and truly understanding and bringing that message together in forums like this with much clearer than I've been able to articulate today, much clearer focus on what it is we're saying. So roundabout answer of saying more of what we're currently seeing, Christopher, and just using that line of communication between leadership, so both leadership on our side, and as we've rehearsed in here, we've got that established leadership structure now with DSLS, so that we're saying the same things to benefit Devon's young children.
So just on that, so obviously you sit in a lot of meetings as DCC, etc. I'm just looking at Adrian and Alex's DAG, etc. You've got DLSS. I know for a fact how passionate Steve is about the NHT, and he's also got the NEU. Is there a piece of work there that we come up with? These are the three messages, and whatever meetings you sit in, they're the same three that I think sometimes it's DCC's working hard and we say this, DLSS says this, and we know at times that some people have quoted figures to MPs, they haven't been right, and then they've basically cut people off at the knees. So I just feel that it's like we almost need a cue card that DAG have got, DLSS has got, you've got, but someone needs to sit and agree that, and it doesn't need to be laboured, but I feel it just needs to be precise.
If I respond, Christopher, and I'll be able to do the question. So I think what you said was, would it be helpful if we had, for example, 3 key things that we were all saying? And the answer to that is absolutely yes. And actually, that's why it's on the agenda. And so I need to thank you on 2 fronts. 1, for making it really clear like that, and 2, for bringing me back into what I should have said in the first place. So I think that's why it's here, so that we begin to agree. What we need to recognise right now is that we at DCC, we've been getting ourselves together. And what I mean by that is getting our leadership structures right and all of those things, so that we're much clearer on what the important thing is. Now the moment is, here are the 3 things. So the first step will be, I will ensure that we share the briefings that we've done so far with DSLS colleagues, and then the next thing will be, let's agree on what we're focused on. Have I answered your question then? Thank you.
Alex.
Thank you. I think this is probably for Adrian. Given that SEND deficits are at the heart of our financial concerns and problems, do the Fair 40 group share that stress point? And if so, because obviously we don't go to those meetings, if so, do Fair 40 lobby as a group on SEND, or are we all paddling our own canoes?
No, thanks, Alex. Yeah, so this time around, we have looked at high needs block funding in the past as an area. See, it's been growing in the pressure band because the first focus was schools' main block funding, but that's part of this time around. We're looking at how the high needs block funding should be treated and how we should get better funding there. Just for background, the funding still has 50% of the calculation based back on the old historic data. So it's trying to move away from that. But one of the key things that we're doing, move away from that, bring it all up into the current positions of where the pressures are. And it is recognised across the country and across all the F40 that there is pressures there.
You know what I'm going to say. Can we please start thinking about funding as a naught to, because early years, as you know, across the country is abysmal. We're fighting for increase in funding rates. However, we're doubly damned in Devon because we are still calculated our rates on the national funding formula. So we are not only low, but we're even lower than the national average. And so we have the same issues. Early years funding is the same issues. And I'd be really interested to know if any of those briefings to MPs included the words early years funding, because all we get thrown back when we lobby is we're investing 1.8 billion, but that's just expanding the funding. And even for private providers, my business, for example, from September, 80% of my income is going to be from the early years funding entitlements, of which I have very little control over how much that is, which is incredibly unusual for any sector. So can we please recognise that for the majority of families, funding now starts from just after 9 months and goes all the way through, and that we need to be thinking about that as a whole, because you are also missing out on some very loud voices in early years in sharing that message about funding across the board in Devon, because we're still separated out and it's not seen as a bigger picture.
So with regards to the request, Gemma, absolutely. What I was noting to myself is, did we mention early years in the bit? And I will double check that and come back to you directly on that. But yes, absolutely, because Devon's children, right? And one of the as it says in the inclusion and learning strategy, early years, it's obvious to everybody, but it doesn't seem to be obvious to everybody. In that, if we don't get that right, then all of us have problems, but most importantly, the children do. So yes, one, I commit to ensuring that we are including early years in any briefings. So commit to that. And two, I will check whether our previous ones did and be really honest and open with you.
Yes, Councillor Bickley.
Thank you. Forgive me if my questions are naive or anything at the moment. I'm still getting up to speed. But for Adrian, seeing that Richard Ford spoke at the House of Commons and they promised that there was going to be a review for 26-27 for national funding formula. So is the meeting you're going to, is that feeding into that work?
Yes, so this will be the F40 lobbying the position and suggestion of how we go forward as a funding formula across the areas. They've done it before with the school funding as well. That was all put forward as suggestions. See, they don't take everything on board because they've still got their things, but they do listen to that group moving forward, and include, like I say, include ASCL as well. So it's coming from the colleges side as well. It's not just schools and the councils doing it, is other things, but we're coming as one force to them.
For this work about a message coming from everybody, you need that by going to that meeting.
Yeah, so that helps because we can then push that forward in directive.
Sorry, following up from that, can I please put a plea to you then, Adrian, when you go to that meeting, because I know you say it goes across the board, but I bet you it won't include PVI early years. And again, the national funding formula still does impact on what we get regionally. So if you could please make a point of that at the meeting, it would be really appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. See any hands up online, so we will move on to item 7, which is membership. So.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say that I'll come on to the proportionality later on, but this is just to advise that we've had Nick Alford's resignation from the end of the summer term. So I believe you're leaving your school. I don't have any other casual vacancies noted advised of at the moment for the end of this term.
Sorry, I've put you on the spot.
No, it's been a really good experience. I've really enjoyed, even though I've not been a member for very long, I've actually really enjoyed the experience. But yeah, I'm retiring from headship after 19 years, so I feel I've done my bit and looking at other opportunities now.
Thank you. Right, so then we move on to specific agenda items. And item 8 is a report of the Deputy Director of Head and Inclusion and Learning. It's a very long title. So over to you, Jack.
Okay, colleagues. The report from the report into inclusion and learning is a data report, and you'll notice in the summary report that we've used the 3 key questions that we outlined in the inclusion and learning strategy to organize that data. And I don't want to take you through point by point for 2 reasons. One, because I know colleagues will have read the report. And 2, it is a very data heavy report. And I've suggested in here that actually the data leads us to asking some key questions, which goes back to the questions that I've organized the report against. The summary of the report says that we have got a lot of work to do in education. And so as I always do in this forum, I'm going to separate out the word we. So if I start with DCC, if I start with Devon County Council's education, inclusion and learning team, we have reported in here that we are redesigning the service, and there was a very good reason for that. We needed to. Our services were not able to support the education system in the way that it needed to. And so where we are with that is that we have established a leadership structure. We've completed phase 1, and that leadership is starting to have an impact already as individuals and as a team in the service. So there will be colleagues in this room that have experienced and felt what that change in that direct contact with people in the locality where they serve their community. Underneath that heads of service level, we've also now completed our next leadership level with our service leads ready to start building teams in the localities. We are just completing some of our central services. We have ensured that our virtual school has strong, visible leadership that will start to reshape our virtual school for all of the vulnerable, valuable children in Devon. And that's a statement of intent from us, is that we are going to expand the work of our virtual school beyond children who are seen by a social worker, beyond that into that wider cohort that includes the children that are referenced in this report that are not currently included in our schools. And so the virtual school will have that responsibility, but the work will get done in the localities. Where we are with the rest of the service is we have over 400 members of staff right now coming towards the end of a consultation period that we are looking forward to sharing the outcome of, both with them first, but also with you as a partnership, to demonstrate that DCC knew that it needed to change, that it did change, and that we're ready to work alongside colleagues in their localities to improve outcomes for young people. The reason why that's so important is because in this report, there are item after item of things that we need to work with you to improve. We also need to work on how we use the resources that we hold centrally in your schools to support you. And that it becomes a key function for DEF, is working out how that happens, invest the resources in schools to improve the inclusivity of those schools. Because for all of us in Devon, all of us in education, we all know that the word now that is most often used in all of the strategy is inclusion, and there's a reason, and that's because in England we do not do it well enough. We do not include all of our children, and it's an absolute moral imperative that we do. So this report has data that leads to those things. In the conclusions, it says that we need to be focused on more inclusive strategies. We need to be looking at some of our behaviour policies in schools and working together and thinking, are these the right things? Is this the right for our children? There are a multitude of views in our collectively in leadership out there, both in school leadership, governance, what families are telling us, what children are telling us. What we need to start doing is working out exactly what does inclusion mean in this community. And so I want to be relatively, for me, brief, Chair, in my summation of this report, because my key message is now is the time, and now is the only time. We have worked really, really hard to get the leadership team in place to lead the rest of our services. Now we need to enhance the relationships where they're good with our partners, and we need to create new relationships where they're not so good. But what we cannot have is this adversarial approach to education in Devon based on us not being good enough. The truth is, it's not good enough for our children and families right now. And that is not me saying to individual colleagues that your school is not good enough. What I'm saying is we do not effectively serve our communities yet. And so this is actually a call, and I've made it in here before, but we feel a lot stronger now that we have our leadership team in place. The new administration have made children's their #1 priority. They've stated that. Our chief exec talks about this in every forum that she's in. Our current DCS is absolutely committed to improving the life chances of all children, and with a focus on the most vulnerable. We're all ready, and I know that we've got colleagues out there that are ready to work with us. What we need to do is build on that to improve education in each and every community in Devon. So I'd like to close there. I'm obviously open to any questions. If you want to ask me questions about the data, that are all okay with that. Okay, but what I want to focus on over the next year, over years, is step by step improving inclusion and learning in every community, all the way from zero, Gemma, all the way until these young people are ready for the next steps when they don't need us anymore.
Thank you, Jack. Are there questions? Christopher?
Hopefully it's on. I know a phrase that Kelly's used in the past is the impact of which has not been felt by children and families. So, yeah, I wrote that down. And this is a question, it's really important that you're getting the right people in the right places to do this once and do it properly. Is there just a real opportunity to get the communications around this right? Because, and I know Alex will agree with me on this, it's not that we don't think there's some really good people doing some really good things in some really good places. It's often, and I just give the recent access funding thing item, the Bromcom Unit 4 item, it's not that we don't think there's people in places doing good things, it's the comms, it's always the comms. It's what are we going to do there? Because there are good things. We have this belief, you know, Jack uses the word exciting, and it is because the children have deserved this, but what's going to be different in the communication? Can you drip feed the good news? Or again, like I said before, let's get a message. So your message, DLSS, NEHT around the F40. Are there 3 things that we can say on that we all say correctly every time? What might the comms look like on this? When I say quick wins, it's not like flash in the pan for Devon Live. It's you're obviously moving. You've got your north and your east, central, etc. But what's the comms going to look like? Because it's not been great in the past, and that's not a reflection on you, but it's just the way it is. And I think often we're feeling that it's the frustration that comes through is the communication aspect.
Christopher, if I'd have prompted you to ask me a question, it would have been that one. Okay, because I totally agree. My view of our communications has been that it's been reactive, slow, and risk averse, in that, and that it is probably a reflection of our service not being good enough. The plan, and again, we're hoping that you will see immediate effect of this, is we've got direct communication. So with inclusion and learning being a council priority, we've got communications colleagues right now saying, in fact, straight after this meeting, okay, so how can we help you get that story around the inclusion and learning strategy, for example, out? Where can we go to see that it live so that our citizens can see this right now, our colleagues out there? That's a different style of comms to what we're all used to in Devon. And again, we want to work with colleagues on that. Instead of it being a comms strategy within DCC, it's how do we do this better? What stories can we tell about what is going on in your schools that helps families to understand, 1, we know what the picture is, 2, we're very aware of that we need to improve, and this is what it looks like when it improves. So yes, you're right. 1, it needs to improve. We want to do it with you. It's something that we're hoping that you will feel almost immediately. So I would hope by the end of the summer term, you will see a different style of comms coming. And then the next bit is how we do that together and do more about that.
Right, if I go to you in order, or do you want to come back on that?
I just think the word adversarial was used earlier. I just think if you want to erode that, it's information, isn't it? If you give the example of an airport when there's delays, what gets people agitated is lack of, even if you say on the hour, every hour, I will update you every hour, and there is no update. It's just that it's that adversarial because they're filling the gap because there's no information. But yeah, no, thank you for that, Jack.
If I go to you in the order that I saw you want to, Graham first, and then Alex, and then Councillor Bickley.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, just kind of following on really. The best way to get people on side is by kind of supporting them and showing that support within their settings. You mentioned in your report about trauma-informed behaviour support strategies. Now that's an ideal way of proving that you can offer a service. You can get alongside people that's going to have a daily or an almost immediate impact on what they're providing and what their services are. But there's no mention of when that rollout begins. And I think, again, linking to what Christopher said about comms, that, every setting, whether it's schools, early years, colleges, will all support that because we're all in this kind of journey together. If you can get out and get in amongst the people, because they're the ones that you're going to need to transform that message, then that message will filter down in a much stronger way because you've got people on side than a briefing note or in that people may skip down. So it's about getting those things. So, putting some dates on things like this trauma-informed behaviour strategies, etc., would be really useful that people can then buy into.
Thank you. We've got a message in the chat there. You can see that one? Yes. Please, can we talk about young people and colleges as well as children in schools? Or state that this is intended in all reference to children and school, which I think we probably have.
And so, Mim, I totally accept that point. And yes, absolutely, key part of our work. And what you won't be able to see is my scribbled notes to myself was actually 0 to 25, exactly that. So I accept that, and I will do in future.
Alex.
Thank you. A quick question on a completely different subject, actually, Jack. I saw that Devon had a children's commissioner appointed. It said something to continuing, issues, and I in supporting children, and I didn't know how that impacted on education, if at all, and where it might sit with deaf if it does. It was complete news to me, and apparently it's the third one we've had, but I just wondered if you could tell me why they're appointed, what they do, and whether it impacts on us.
Thanks, Alex. It's a good question. So it's a DFE policy. So because of the outcome of the Ofsted inspection that is publicly now available, DFE's policy is for a commissioner to do a review of the capacity of the council to improve. So it happens across the country and other local authorities. And the commissioner will look at children's social care, but more broadly around partnership, around corporate leadership, and around vulnerable children more widely. So education is a part of that. And as we know, as part of the inspection framework, virtual school, elective home education are all part of that. So they will be looking at all of that.
Is it significant we've had 3? Is that, you said it's common, this kind of thing. This is our third. Does that imply we've just not been getting it right?
No, I mean 3 because to remind me who the 3 are, it might have been before my time. Yeah, so Matt's already. So Matt remains in place for a minute, and this is probably more of a question for DFE because it's their role. The new commissioner is coming to just do a 3-month piece of work, as far as I understand right now. So it just gives that fresh perspective to the DFE. No. No, but we like to think about the whole needs of children. Councillor Vicky.
Thank you. I just wanted to give a little bit of picture about the political situation coming into this and how important it is. Obviously, we just had the election and I campaigned greatly on the failing services towards parents and to families and schools. Having worked in a school office for 10 years, I've seen the impact of that, listening to Senko's and everybody else talking about the adversarial sort of approach and the walls that have been up at Devon County Council. So when I took this role on, I was already sort of coming in for an argument and let's sort this out. I've been very pleasantly surprised over how much work is already going on. But my key thing is, as you're saying, is that message out to schools, out to families. So that, just rest assured, that is something that we're really, really keen to ensure, that all the fantastic work that can go on, there's no point in any of that if it doesn't reach where it's meant to go to. So I do see that as my role. So just wanted to explain that.
Thank you.
Had a question about localities and having been in a meeting yesterday where there was lots and lots of talk about the restructuring of the ICBs and their kind of adoption of neighbourhood teams. I wanted to know whether there's been any talk with health colleagues and whether there's any kind of sense of kind of coordination of these various different localities.
I'll respond to that. Yes, so that is a very live conversation right now. So the development of neighbourhood teams and our new localities is a conversation that we're trying to make sure that we're all working within the same footprint. So there's no outcome of that conversation yet, but it's definitely, I can just tell you that it is a very much a live conversation with the health colleagues right now.
Thank you. Were those all the questions? I can't see any online. Okay, thank you, Jack.
Can I just clarify, are we just noting that report?
We've all heard it. If we all note Jack's report. Okay, thank you. So moving on then to item 9, which is the SEND transformation programme. So I'll hand over to Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. So just want to pull out some highlights of this report. What I've tried to do this time is think about the work that we've been doing since I last updated the forum in March. One of the key things that's been happening since then is a review and reset of the SEND transformation programme. So we have managed this year to deliver a whole load of activity within the SEND transformation programme. So we've increased specialist places because we have challenges around sufficiency. We have developed the support toolkits for schools and settings around things like ordinary available provision and emotionally based school avoidance. We have increased the output of education, health and care plans. We've still got work to do in that space. But one of the things that I think it's important to note, and it goes back to absolutely the thing that I keep saying, Christopher, is the impact is not yet felt by children and our families. So it's important that we don't continue to do what I think we've always done, is just continue to tick boxes and activity. So the reason for having a look at this is for us to think about how we accelerate the progress in order for the impact to be felt by families. So we had the transformation programme with 7 strands. It's publicly available on the website. I've talked about that here before. One of the things that we have done and I've spoken to DFE about as well is resetting that into 4 really clear priorities that do fit with the SEND strategy, with the inclusion and learning strategy, and with our a much cleaner focus in the next 12 months about what we want to prioritise. I've put them in the report. The first priority really is it's an interesting title. The feedback from others has been useful, but we've called it investing in Devon schools by getting the basics right. And that's really because what we want to show is our intention that if we are better around our commissioning, some of the financial management, cost recovery, provision management, that actually the money that we are spending in other places can be reinvested back into our schools. We talk about we don't have enough money in the system. Actually, there's money that is being spent in different places that could actually benefit within those communities that Jack talked about. So there's a real focus on getting our basics around commission and contracting right. The second one is improving support to children, young people and families, schools and partners for this next year, with a really clear focus on statutory processes. So our education, health and care needs assessments. We've still got a lot of work to do in that space. We're going to double down in that space by prioritising that over the next 12 months. The third one around reshaping our services, Jack talked about that in terms of what the council is doing in that space to make a more place-based approach, and then also building inclusive communities. That's a language that you have heard us use multiple times. It is a clear priority in our inclusion and learning strategy. It's a clear commitment in our SEND strategy, and it's all about the future. So the fourth priority is much more about where we're going to in the long term, what's our vision. So that's how we're going to set up the programme. It will include in those 4 priorities much of the work that has been happening in the SEND transformation programme, a review of some things of whether they're priority or not, but some things we might pause for a minute, because actually what we need to do is really focus on key things. We've tried to do lots. I mean, there's lots of work that needs to happen, as we all know. Over the next 12 months, what we want to do is just really focus in on some key areas, because we are not we're not moving quick enough, and that's not good enough for children and young people. So that's one bit, the reset of the programme. And then I've just given you some key updates really on some of the activity within the SEND transformation programme. I think one of the key ones really for here, and that we've been talking to schools about in different places, is the review of our education, health and care plan funding framework. We know this is a big one for you, and it is for us as well, in terms of whether we've got that right at the minute. And I would suggest we'd all probably say no in that space. So we're working with people too an organisation that we have commissioned to come in and do that work. They are currently in their sort of insights and analysis stage, where they are looking at the data, looking at the funding that we put against every single education healthcare plan across the county, and also talking to stakeholders. So we have engaged DSLS in that work. So we have schools that are part of this work that will help us move forward. We'll also be looking at a wider engagement with schools as we move forward with this work, with the aim that at the end of this piece of work, by the end of the year, we'll have a much clearer framework around how funding is put in place to support children who have EHCPs. Likelihood is that it will be much more around needs-led. At the minute, we have a framework that says, does this child need a one-to-one? That is so ancient that it just drives a particular behaviour that we just want to get away from. And I think across the country, if you look at local authorities that have reviewed their funding frameworks, they've moved to a much more needs-led approach in this space. And then the second thing that I'm just going to draw out is just the work around the SEND strategy. So we've got our commitments in the SEND strategy. I've talked about the SEND strategy here before, and I know that you'll all know it really well. The 4 cornerstones approach to co-production, we set a really clear intention that that would be the underpinning framework of our strategy, which helps us with that cultural shift in behaviour, in really living our values as a system. We've been doing some work with Genuine Partnerships, who developed that model, and they have completed a lot of focus groups in terms of baselining. Where are we now? How do families feel about us living those 4 values of welcome and care, value and include, communicate and working in partnership? We've got an event next week, 24th of June, that launches the 4 cornerstones, that gives us that baseline, and then we will think about how we measure that across the system. So you will start to see from September that we'll be trying to evaluate how the system feels. And I've talked about that a lot before. We can count the, individual children in data all day long, but what we haven't been able to do yet is really test with families and with children. How does it feel for you? Because that's really important in terms of us changing the way that we've worked before, and the impact question again around whether our families are actually feeling the impact of the work that we're doing. I'm going to stop there and welcome any questions.
3, I think, quick questions. They're about finance, although of course DEF is about that to a great degree, but they're all to do with, I think, your report, Kelly. So the first one is obviously the safety valve is driving some of this. Are our interactions on that safety valve program positive at the moment, or are we getting any pushback? Is everything going okay? Are we getting the money we expect? And our relation, safety valve's been paused, so nobody's quite sure what's happening to people who are currently in it. So that's my first question.
Can I suggest we pick that up in the finance update?
Okay.
Thanks, Alex.
Right. Okay, so that's the first one. The second one was that you mentioned in your report near the end that you were working with Devon Audit Partnership to improve financial controls. Obviously, there have been issues about financial controls more widely, and some might come up in a minute later in other reports. But as far as your work is concerned, have financial controls been improved? I don't know why they were weak or where they were weak, but has that work been done?
Yes. So you may have seen the audit committee last week. We did an update on this report, so that's publicly available. The reports are available. We've been doing lots of work in this space in order to respond to that audit that we asked. I think it's important to say that we asked for that audit to be done because that we knew that we need to do some work in that space. So we have been improving financial management and governance and some of our IT systems that can help us to do that better since that. So that includes, obviously, Unit 4 has come out in terms of the financial system, but us using our education IT system in order to track children through and manage the provision and the contracting better. So yes, progress in that place.
Okay, thank you. And my third and final question, Jack referred earlier to collaborative working, and that's an aspiration, you know, we all believe in that. The source of angst last year in the consultation about the 0.5% was that schools felt that an issue with SEND was everything was escalating, and, you know, we wound up paying 100,000 per pupil when at the bottom schools couldn't get the sort of 1,000 or 2 they needed to do the base work. And schools were concerned that the 0.5% was, you know, damaging their ability to provide the all-inclusive service that prevented escalation. And it's really, it's an appeal rather than a question, but we need somebody to explain to us before consultation next year how that 0.5% has been used and what the impact of it is. And I want to keep that at the forefront so we don't forget that, because that's what's caused so much difficulty between us all in the last 2 or 3 years. So it's really important that there's a clear sort of reporting on how that bit of it's been used. I know it's narrow, but it's important. Please.
I agree. We have this conversation a lot, don't we? All in the last 2 years that I've been here, so totally agree. We're not going to get away from asking for that 0.5%. So let's all be clear about that.
But that's
in
why
the
we
safety
need to
valve.
know how
Yeah.
it's been used.
Yeah, and I'm just going to reiterate, regardless of whether we spend it on things to support schools in a different way, as we've said before, we could just take it and put it on the bottom line. So we do have to work with you in order to make that money be used in its best way to support, to invest really to save that money. And like we've said probably several times here and in SPIG, the conversation between us needs to get better around that, doesn't it? And we need to show the impact for that. So absolutely take your point.
Yeah.
Alex, I just wanted to, we will pick it up in the finance update and the SPIG minutes, but just for everybody in DEF, we've committed from school finance group to do that consultation differently. And so just to pick up on that, we put a request into DSLS and to ensure that consultation is done with and not to. And I know that's been a commitment from SPIG in the past, but to be perfectly frank, I'm not prepared to go through that consultation unless it's done with schools again, after my experience last year. So it absolutely needs to be done with. The other part, and we picked this up in DEF, the other part of that consultation is ensuring that our wider school system have a clearer understanding of the financial principles that we all work to. Because what the consultation showed last year is that there are some gaps in knowledge that we all need to address, so that we know that when we're talking about school finance, when we're talking about finance across the board from 0 to 25 in all of our settings, we all know exactly what we're talking about. And so that we're not making mistakes and getting into those adversarial positions without us all understanding where it came from. So the commitment is from SPIG that we will be doing that consultation with, as opposed to or as per previous commitments.
Thank you. Nicola, then Gemma, then Rob.
A couple of questions, Kelly, thanks. The first is, I wonder if you could comment on the role of the voluntary sector in the priorities that you've set out there and how you're planning to kind of involve that stakeholder group conversation.
In relation to anything specific? Four, yes, absolutely. And we've talked a little bit about this before as well. So we've got a lot of work to do in terms of what it looks like for us first as the priority, and priority 3 and 4 are interlinked in terms of got to redesign our services in order to enable that vision around priority 4 to happen. The voluntary sector is an absolute priority in terms of the next bit of how we build that partnership. So we've talked, don't we, quite a lot about schools and about the council and health partners, but the value that the voluntary sector bring into our communities is huge, and we need to be working more closely. And we haven't really done that work in this space in the way that we could have done before, but it gives us a real opportunity. So I suppose in short, my answer is absolutely. As we move through this work, we will be engaging with the voluntary sector on what that looks like in different communities. That will obviously look different across the county.
And the second question is, these are a really helpful list of priorities, but if one writes lists of priorities, there are some things which are not priorities. So I'd like to know what is on the back burner as a result of setting it out in that way.
Yes, so in terms of the work that's currently in the transformation programme, we have been thinking about, we're doing some sort of, the challenge is it's all a priority, isn't it? So the situation that Devon is in is a challenge in terms of everything needs fixing, because we came into, and I've come into this role in a place that absolutely is a position was systemically failing our children and young people. That's quite strong words to use, but so all of the bits need fixing in order to improve that. And the things that we need to slow down this year are some of the sort of nice to have things around the offers that we have around, some of the softer sort of communication stuff, training, developing guides for people. Is that more important than focusing on the statutory processes where parents are waiting for their child to have a place in school? It's the balance between, I know it's not specific, but some of those things we've been thinking about, are our teams doing things that are right now nice to have rather than must-haves? And those are the things that we've sort of been working through, and we're still finalising some of that.
Thank you. Gemma?
Hi. Two questions. The first one is the launch day on the 24th of June. I'd be interested to know if any early years representatives or parents of under fives are included in that. You might not be able to answer that now.
I can check for you.
Thank you. And the second part is the bigger part around the EHC plan reviews. And I'm again wondering if early years are going to be included in that. I've spoken before about how often we write them, and I'm pretty sure everybody in this room knows just how much work is involved in applying for an EHC plan, but we get nothing for it because we don't have any funding attached to an EHC plan that's statutory. We have to apply separately. And additionally, for the inclusion funding in Devon, the deadline for children for next term to apply for inclusion funding is actually passed. It passed at half term. So we have to, in some way, if we have a child that comes from now that wants a place, we will not be able to. I know you can frown, Jack, because this is how I know it's madness. Yeah.
Sorry, I always frown when I start writing.
So a child comes in. I now can't apply for funding for them. For it to not start until January, but it won't actually get paid until the adjustment payment at the end of spring 2026 term. And within that, I may well have to provide support, enhanced ratios, resources and equipment, make changes to my provision, and spend 50 billion hours gathering evidence and applying for an EHC plan, which is not going to do me or my setting or my staff any good. It will only help the school that this child might go to next term. So is it again that wider picture, is that being looked at with that EHC review?
Yes. What would be useful, because this is definitely not an area of my specialist knowledge, would be for us to have a conversation and for me to take that away and do some more work on looking into what you're describing, if that's all right, Jem, if we could have that conversation. Thank you.
Rob, sorry to keep you waiting.
All right, morning everyone. We've been asked to support the implementation of the four cornerstones approach within schools as DEF, and obviously I'm assuming, sorry, that's as a result of the area send inspection for Rotherham that was published in November 2024, where co-production obviously comes out really well. So my question is this, I suppose, is it specifically for that? Because the latest data I've been able to find on Rotherham is that their EHCPs are higher than national and regional, and their permanent exclusions are also on the up and are above national and regional levels. So what problem are we trying to fix?
Thanks, Rob. The problem we're trying to fix is the way that we work with families. So let's just put the statutory processes and the data aside just for a second. The model of the 4 cornerstones was actually developed in 2011 with Sir Brian Lamb. It was a project funded by the DFE. It's a nationally recognised co-production model that has been used across not just in Rotherham but in other parts of the country, and that is promoted by Contact, who do a lot of work with parent carer forums and parents across the country. So that's why it was chosen, really. It wasn't really related to Rotherham's performance around anything else.
Thank you for that, because obviously they're not a statistical neighbour, but Dorset are, and they've recently been obviously got outstanding for their children's services. So it would seem likely to look more locally into the southwest for examples of how things can go better, if you get my meaning.
Absolutely. We're also doing that. So we will take help from anyone, is my response. And Dorset, in terms of the region, we meet regularly across the region to share practice, what's working, what isn't. And so we're working with lots of people at the minute in order to try and help.
And I'm sorry if I missed it, but in the report, I couldn't find where the kind of evidence-based for using this particular approach was. So, sorry if I missed that.
It's not in the report, but if you want that, I can provide that for you.
It's just that obviously to make a decision to support something, I like to know that it's evidence-based. That's just where I stand on it, really. But you've explained, so thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? Okay, thank you. Then we'll on. We have recommendations here, which are to 1, endorse the reset of the SEND transformation programme to accelerate progress. So I need, presumably I'll take a vote on that one as it's an endorsement. Fiona, is that? Is that what you're wanting?
I'm so sorry, I did have one more question. Apologies.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yep.
The approach of using the AV1s for emotional based school refusal, which, I mean, we've been using AV1s in Cornwall for some years, but again, there's no evidence to suggest this actually works, and so I'm just wondering why that's an approach.
Thanks, Rob. I think our educational psychology service would disagree with you around the evidence. Part of it, piloting it in 5 secondary schools, is for us to understand the impact of how that can be applied in Devon. So that's currently underway, and the EP service are doing some evaluation of that work locally as well to see whether or not it's having an impact.
Apologies. There is evidence provided by the EPS reports, not Devon's ones nationally, but they're not conclusive.
Okay. It's always a bit of a grey area. We have asked to note things, we're asked to vote on things, endorse. Kelly, does that mean that you want to vote on this?
Shall I explain what I would like, actually, because it's clearer than maybe some of the language in the report? I would really like DEF to support our reset of the transformation programme, because the aim is to accelerate the progress that we all want to see. So that's the first one. Second one, I want I would also like DEF to publicly support actually that work around the EHPP funding framework, because we know from conversations with many of you that that's an issue that we've got to tackle in Devon. So your support around completing that work would be very much welcome. And in terms of implementing the 4 cornerstones, this is going to be something that is an expectation across all services in Devon in terms of how we evaluate how families feel in interactions with all services. So your support in implementing that would be also welcome.
So the question is, do we need to vote to show that we do support you? Or do
Yes, Chair, we would
do?
need to, and my understanding is Kelly is asking, so if we take out the words endorse in recommends 1, 2 and support all 3 recommendations, I think is my understandings what now been asked.
So, okay then, so I will take a vote. Can I take them on block? On block, right. So I think all of those in favour of supporting the 3 recommendations there. So I think that's
So
probably.
that's unanimous in the room.
Is it?
Online,
No.
it looks unanimous.
I'm abstaining because I didn't think Rob's question was fully answered, and if there's a lack of an evidence base for the proposal, that's my problem. Rob's got his hand up though.
Is that to vote, Rob, or do you want to say something?
No, I understand where it's come from. Is I suppose the point I'm trying to make is that I'd just like to see where the evidence base is coming from, because that's it really. But Kelly's providing me with that, so I'm happy to support.
Thank you. Okay, right. So that's
Okay, in that case then, can we clarify whether Alex, you are
yes.
in
yes.
favour? Okay.
So online, where are we? I think just about everybody put their hand up, did they?
Are there any against online? Or any abstentions online? No?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
And in the room it was unanimous, so
Yes.
yeah, so that's unanimous carried.
Thank you, everyone. So we will now move on to items for decision, which is item 10, finance. So refer you to the report that you have and hand over to Adrian.
Thanks, Chair. The first part is looking at the minutes from the SFIG meeting of the 4th of June, particularly there, which I think Jack will come in on as well regarding this. Is back to the conversation we were talking about around Bromcom and the Unit 4 process. We are very conscious of the pressures that are out there with schools having to deal with this aspect coming in. Colleagues within my team have been working tirelessly to try and sort out the issues that we've got across the area with all the communications that are coming out through the blog to advise bursars on how they move forward with the process there. Also, our financial consultants have been out supporting above and beyond their current timeframes to support schools in getting the things forward. We are conscious there's still some teething issues there that are going on. Those would have happened with Bromcom, whether we had Unit 4 coming in as well. I think there's some things there that would have always happened. That's just the nature of a new system coming in place. What I would reiterate with everybody is that if there are still issues arising, please go through SCOMES and let them know that there is that issue so that we can then resolve those as well. To our knowledge, we worked through what we had from the consultation results that came back from Devon SLS, and that those have been dealt with and are being worked through. Harleen had an online meeting with some bursars the other week to go through issues as well again, and that's been useful, and good feedback came back from that group to understand where we're going. And again, it's like I say, for us, it's to reiterate, we're conscious of the problems there. Any new issues or any concerns that we still got, please go through SCOMES, because that way we can resolve those matters as well.
Bev, you have your hand up. Is that a residual hand? I think it probably.
Yeah,
is.
apologies. Yes, that was a mistake. Sorry. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Alex.
Adrian, anecdotally, there are still quite a number of schools where there are really quite significant problems, unable to set budget, invoices coming to the wrong school, that kind of thing. I mean, we are recognizing it's an issue for all of us. We are 3 months into the year. Is there any is there any sign of it being resolved? And I know there's a specific issue for federations. I don't know where things are up to on that.
Yeah, so we're obviously working with other sections of finance because it's not all coming through us. It's that, our payments and revenue team are working hard on their side as well to get the invoices paid. As we said, we've identified where there are issues with supplier IDs, information coming through, and that's all being worked through. My financial consultants are working with those federations as well to get work through the concerns that we've got on that side, and SCOMAS and Michael Hurd's working there. So we're trying to get through those concerns and get through to the bottom of it. But part of the issue is that because it's linked to coding and information, it's quite a lot of pinning down to where some of the issues are arising. And like I say, there is the thing that some of this would have still happened regardless of what system we were using in the centre. But we are working as fast as we can to get these matters resolved. And it's also conversations with the providers of those services, the systems as well.
That's part of the point. Do you have any comeback on the provider? Because I mean, this obviously hasn't worked in the way any of us would have really wanted. I don't know how contract terms work in this particular case, but.
So Alex, I hope so, is the answer. But the first thing I wanted to, Chair, is draw attention. I wrote to school leaders and to governors last night on this issue, and I think it might be helpful for deaf colleagues if I summarise that communication. The first thing is I want to acknowledge the disruption. Actually, the angst is the better word, and I'm using one of Alex's words here. The angst that this has caused in the system. I want to acknowledge that because we've had situations where colleagues have had to repeat work, not understand work, go into, and that is in the context of us all working in difficult situation in the first place. And I want to publicly acknowledge that. So I've done it in writing, but I want to do it here as well in deaf. Okay, so what? So the next bit is I want to acknowledge the work of DSLS in this space, in that I know that colleagues internally, both through SCOMAS and finance colleagues, were supporting schools on the ground working through this. But I didn't myself have a true sense of the scale of this. And Alex, I acknowledged that in SFIG, as we know, School Finance Group, and DSLS really supported me in understanding the scale. The next thing I want to draw attention to is the support that's available to any school, any federation that is experiencing these difficulties. Adrian has already said finance consultants are far better briefed than they were at the beginning of this, and are able to either support directly or signpost where that support is. And the second is that we've ensured, and SCOMAS themselves ensured, that they have added additional resource to solve each and every problem that schools are experiencing. The final bit, which isn't in my communication, is an acknowledgement that this appears to be, here we are again in another situation that is affecting schools and affecting well-being out there. The final bit is we will be looking at communications and could we have done this differently from our point of view. But there is a caveat to that. When you make changes on the scale of this change, then it isn't ever going to be totally smooth. The key question is, could we have done it differently? Could we have done it better? We will, and we are committed to doing that part of our directorate's title, that learning piece, and we will share that learning in here. If we feel it could have been done differently, we will share that, and we will look to make sure that we work together to do those things. If I was at the other side now, I would be thinking, so, you know, Jack, we've heard it all before, et cetera, et cetera. But I think the key thing now is to ensure right now that any colleagues that are still experiencing, to pick up Alex's anecdote, we had a letter from a federation last night saying this is ongoing, etc., is to all of us in the system to say the support is there, please access it. Please do not be there in a situation where you're not able to do your day-to-day and actually it's impacting on your well-being. Please accept the support, engage with the support so that we can help you work through.
Thank you, Jack. Any more? Obviously, it was something that was discussed at the school finance group as well, and I didn't, before I handed over to Adrian, draw your attention to the minutes that you have in your pack from the finance group. So anyway, we will now move on to the finance update proper.
So Chair, I think any of the issues for the finance update from the big minutes will be picked up in Adrian's paper.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. So as you see, you've got the report there regarding the outturn position for the dedicated schools grant, schools funding for 24-25. Before any contributions from the DFE and Devon, there was an increase to the accumulated deficit to schools grant of deficit of 51.5 million. Now, this is compared to the safety valve plan where we had a position of 31.2 million. So we've had an increase in year of 20.3 million to the actual pressure on the DSG side. What I would say in there as well, that as part of the dedicated schools grant forecasting, we had planned for management actions of 15.4 million last year, of which we did achieve 10.7 million of those management actions. 4.7 were not delivered in that period. So you can already see that if we hadn't even have got those in place, we'd been even further in that deficit. We're up by 30 million. So it's, I don't know that we've got, you know, managed to achieve those, but we've seen other pressures coming through. Predominantly pressures there have been around the requests from the DFE to make sure that we're getting rid of the numbers of EHCPs, but moving them through the system at a faster pace and recognising them rather than having the those in the backlog position. We had at the end of March 1,000 overdue EHCP reviews. This is down from same time previous year by 158. Obviously, there's still a way to go getting those in place. From month 11, we did see an improvement to the overall position by 3.3 million. Now, this is 1 million of that was a shift as a result of surplus balances across the DSG, and that has been used to offset the deficit as per the guidance of the DFE department. As of March 25, we did also see that we had 9,933 EHCPs in place. This was an increase of 10.1 on that from the previous year. Can move into looking at the DSG as a whole and where we are with where the pressures have been. Firstly, see that alternative provision, we saw an underspend at the end of the year of 241,000. Now, this is a really good position to have been in when you think at the beginning of the year we started reporting considerable pressures of nearly 1.8 million on this budget. Action has been taken to review how we've been looking at those provisions in that area, looking at demands across the board. We have seen an increase over the demand of just under 1 million through the number of requests coming in from Section 19 plan and also special commissioning at WAVE. But with that was offset by recovery of basic entitlement, or the ORPU for education other than at school, where pupils of nearly £1 million coming from that side as well. We are also recognising that the diabetes funding, that 280,000 of that will be met from health. And that request has gone in for them to be funding that for us, but we're still waiting for that to be paid. Within SEND mainstream, reporting that we've spent 3.2 million across the pre-16 mainstream HCPs. Within that, we had identified management actions as well to be met, of which there were 3.8 million. We managed to meet 1.6 of those across this year. Within our children educated other than at school, the overspend was 3.7 million, and this is around tutoring specialist provision, as there are 250 pupils, more pupils in that than planned for the year. However, the average cost of those pupils is down slightly by £100 to that budgeted. As you can see, that big demand of extra pupils coming through for tutoring levels rather than being in settings has caused that little rise in that area. Within our maintained and academy special schools, Acton saw an overspend of 4.8 million, and that average number is really linked to the plus packages and exceeded places as we forecast for 1,842, whereas compared to the budget of 1,831. Our plus packages saw 29 above that budgeted, with additional costs of 466,000. However, this was offset by 22 top-up places ending as planned, and cost reduction down by 300,000. Within our independent special schools, we saw an overspend of 6.8 million for the year, and that's after management actions of 10.1 million in this area. There's also 261,000 of health funding that is still to be agreed within this section, and again, we're working with that to try and get that funded in that direction. The over 35.4% of the overall high needs block budget supports young people in independent specialist settings, and it supports 12.8 of the total number of pupils within the HCP. This compares to a national average of 9%. We're looking also to carry forward some requests. Here we have requests for the individual school balances. So at the end of this financial year, we saw our maintained school balances across primary, secondary, special school and the hospital education school coming in at 13.6 million this year. That is down from equivalent schools last year from 18 million. So there's a 4.5 million reduction in the overall surpluses. Across that, there are 13 schools that are seeing deficit budgets totaling 1.9 million. So we are asking for, or want you to note that we are carrying forward those school balances for the new financial year. And in addition, other balances that we have relate to some dedelegated budgets for schools contingency pot to roll forward of 1.3 million to meet agreements for 25-26. The maternity fund seeing 59,000 to be carried forward. We have trade unions, 74,000 here. This is higher than would normally be. This links partly to the conversation that's been going on in recognising trade union costs for the academic year 24-25, so that we know we've been working to understand who we need to be paying and getting the academy elements across for this year, and that the team's been working hard on that. So there's an additional rise there, 74, but this also includes the remainder of this academic year 24-25 as well, be funded. There is a small deficit we're rolling forward for copyrights of 55,000, and that will be recovered in 25-26. The reason we have a sort of deficit is that we always allocate this based on the known funding agreement that comes from the DFE, and this year it's slightly higher than we previously had, so that's why we roll that forward into the year. In addition, we also have some carry forwards within the high needs block, both linked to elements that relate to the summer term for 24-25 of the academic year, and that's the SEMO partnerships. That's the final payments there, 122,000, and for emotional based school avoidance, there's 220,000 as well there. So we asked you to note all those elements as well. Thank you, Chair. Is there any questions?
A couple of really broad questions, Adrian. The safety valve, going back to the point earlier, with the government saying that the safety valve's been paused for new entrants, I appreciate. Are we confident, as far as we can be, that existing safety valve mechanisms are working as expected and that we can reasonably rely on continuing funding? Is that, where are we up to on that?
Yeah. Yes, thank you for reminding me of that, Alex. Yes, so safety valve, as we know it, is still continuing. We are due to make our second submission for this financial year in mid-July. We have already done our first submission back in April for this. We submitted it. We're due to see the first payment for this year come through on the 31st of July. There's been no statement to say that we were not going to receive that funding this year. Going forward, we are obviously we were waiting as part of the spending review that came out last week to hear any announcement for SEND, but as we know, that's been moved down to now paper coming out in the autumn, white paper coming out in the autumn, so we're no further forward and understanding on that. Part of that concern as well there is that we don't know what's happening with the statutory override, which is due to end March 26, and that obviously impacts not just us, it impacts quite a lot of authorities in having to then bring that cost back onto the statement. So
it's a linked question. The Fair 40 publish a list of activities and publicity, and it did say that Devon had acknowledged that they might not be able to set a budget next year unless the safety valve override either continued or and I don't know whether that has any impact on us. I mean, it obviously does. If you can't set a budget, but that's presumably not realistically likely.
No, it's just highlighting that because of the statutory override, there is this pressure, and it's like I say, it's not just us as an authority. That would be quite a considerable amount of the authorities. We don't know what the plan is. We won't know what was in. There have been rumblings about different things that would be happening, but we don't know concrete. And like I said, we were hoping to hear that as part of the spending review, what the plans were for.
I know it is difficult, when nobody knows going to be, including on SEND and EHCPs. Okay, thank you.
Christopher.
Thank you, Chair. Just trying to tie up a few things earlier and more in the meeting to this to get some forward momentum. Item 4 on here, the surplus carry forward, etc. And just taking Alex's point about the F40, tying that into my point about how can we get DCC, DLSS, NAHT, local MPs, etc. It can damage us that schools are sat there saying we're broke, and then certain schools are carrying 13.5, nearly 14 million. It's how do we structure a narrative around that? Because if you, like Jack said, there is no point persisting with the let's go cap in hand saying we need more money, we need more money. If there is money, there's not equity, it would look like. So again, if we're going to go with a 3-whip or a 3-line strap or whatever of we're saying this DCC, we'll all say this about the funding. Is there a clarification or an agreed, what do we say about this 13 million? Because no doubt it's sat there with good intentions, but it doesn't help us, does it? It doesn't help us saying we need more.
So Christopher, this absolutely, this goes back to use your words actually, to link it all together. So when we talk about inclusive learning communities, what we have to look at is, do we educate every child in the community? When we find out that we don't, and how can we do that, what we need to start doing is what resources are currently allocated to that community. In that conversation will need to be, Well, we've got, if we've got a college, if we've got an early years provider, if we've got a school that has less resources or is using its resources differently, we need to have that conversation in that community. Now, I'm talking around a subject that we absolutely need to start to have the conversation on. And so if we take the item in the finance report that you're picking out is around surpluses, we need to have a conversation around that. We also need to understand it in the context. You'll note that the surpluses in Devon schools last year was 13 million. Okay, and I can't remember the exact figures, but it dropped by 4.5 million, I think. Okay, so what that shows is there's a trend that the funding that is in Devon isn't meeting the needs, etc., etc. We need to have that conversation together. To get to the last bit of your question, sorry to point at you, Christopher. To get to the last bit of the question, we need to utilise DSLS, DEF, all of our forums to have those conversations openly. So when we talk about sharing data, we obviously mean the data around the children, but we also mean the data around the finances, so that we do that together, so that we start to change our narrative. And our 3-point agenda recognizes the fact that there may be some surplus in part of our education landscape, and here is our plan about how we're going to use that differently going forwards. Are we in the place where we can have that conversation right now? I would argue not right now. Do we need to get into that place? Absolutely. We need to do that together, is what I would say to that. Don't know what you were going to say, Adrian.
So where I was going to follow is to be clear, obviously this is maintained schools only. So we, that's part of our conversation would be if they're saying you need to use that to support it, we'd be then saying, well, that's only a small percentage of our schools. Where does all the academy funding? We're not seeing that side come in. So you've got to be taking that whole picture to be doing that. So like I say, I agree with you saying we don't want to be showing that as being the position, because that could be used, but there is also that's a third of our schools that we're talking about there. The other 2/3 need to be considered in that conversation if you're talking about pulling that money back.
It's highly relevant, I think, that academies are expected really to retain 5% reserves. So I'm not trying to do the mental arithmetic because it's different schools, isn't it? But you do need to retain reserves. Academies are genuinely challenged on that. They're also challenged directly by the department if their reserves are considered excessive, but they're at a level that I think only a handful in the country have got. I think it's 20% now. And for most of us, 5% is aspirational. So we're at the bottom end, trying to keep minimum reserves. I suspect there's not that many schools in Devon who are carrying excessive, but it's just getting a feel for the total amounts involved. You need some.
Yeah, I was going to say, as part of our out-term position, we always check those schools that are going high, or also seeing where we're seeing considerable drops, because obviously that's again to understand why have we gone from such a high level to some, is that more than just something that's happened in year? Is there, is it that they've made a purchase or something that's caused that? So we do and try and get that clarity around why they've got that spend, so that we can challenge as well.
I just want to note in here how our language has just started to change around it not being we, and understanding we're starting to separate out different school systems. That's why I was talking around it at the beginning, is we just need to be clear around serving the needs of children in their community, looking at the resources that are in that community, no matter what your setting is. And so we'll probably need to be clearer in our narrative that when we're talking about surpluses here, we're only talking about maintained schools. I think we can take that and do that. But then when we move forward to what are we going to do, we do that together and with increased openness and increased transparency. And I'm very aware that some colleagues are not going to be comfortable with that. And I'm very aware that some colleagues might say, actually, I don't want to share that data, even though most of it's publicly available. I'm very aware of that, but this is how we're changing. Well, you want to change so that we're talking about the community and not talking about the type of school that we are.
Christopher and then Nicola.
Yeah,
Sorry.
just on that, and again, I think it's, sorry if I'm boring on this, but I think the narrative's really important, because Alex and Adrian are quite right when they say this is it's academies. If that was over hundreds of schools, but if it's just 13.5 million, I think that's the number in the maintained. What's that? 92 schools or 82 schools? So I think when Jamie Stone, for the record, and I were discussing this, I mean, openly, I think the number came out, that's about 144,000 each. So then you're talking, well, that's a really poor narrative for us. It's like, well, you're not struggling then, are you? If it across 82 schools, you roughly got 144,000, then that is really difficult to say, please, sir, can I have some more? So again, it's just going back to when you say, and DLSS, sorry to point, and NEHT are really hot on this and trying to get with the NEHU. It's like, what are we saying? Because, you know, Steve Hitchcock's got holes in his roofs and buckets out every time he rains. He's certainly not sat there with 144, etc. So we've got to control. Yeah, it's just maintained, but that almost makes it worse, because it looks like those few schools have got more money of the 13 million. So I think it's, yeah, we just need to be mindful of what it looks like when we go to MPs and up to London, what we're saying.
So a question about education other than at school. Interested to see there's an overspend there, and just wanted to ask whether that is a trend. And the reason for my question is that we've experienced currently in the primary school where I govern, of a year 6 child going into year 7 who won't be going into year 7. The offer is for them to be educated at home through tuition, which I assume sort of sits within this category. That's by the family considered to be a very far from desirable circumstance, and by us as well, very concerned about the lack of support that family will have once they stop being under our auspices, which is in a matter of very few weeks. So I just wanted to know, we've never come across that situation before. I was interested to know whether that is an increasingly common occurrence and what you feel about it.
You can see from the nods, yes, it is a trend. This is what I was referencing before around including young people in their community, because so many of our children and families feel that they can't be included, and may actually be being told that they can't be included. All of us need to understand that better and come together around all of the children in the community to look at why and look at what we can do about it. It's linked to the conversation that we've just had around resources that are in that community. Why can't we meet the need? We need to look at those transition points. In the consultation, we absolutely intend to look at a different way of the transition from our early years providers. See what I'm doing now, Gemma? I'm bringing it in every time into our primary schools, because I know that's going to be something that we want to bring in, an idea around that. And it goes back to Gemma's previous point. Year 6 to 7, Kelly has talked in here and given us the figures around 70% of EHCPs in children with EHCPs in our primary school, and then when they go to secondary, that's dropped off through phase transfer to 40%. Have I got the figure? So I do apologise that I haven't got the specific figure. So absolutely, it's a trend. Absolutely, we all need to look at why, how. There are some very, very vulnerable young people in those cohorts, and we need to focus on those immediately, and we are internally, but we need to work with you all in order to make sure that all of our children are included in their community.
Thank you. Rob.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to be clear that I'm going to make this point as a trustee, because I'm the trustee on 2 trusts, one is secondary and primary, and the other one is primary only. And whilst I think it's laudable to talk about using resource locally for local children, on the primary only trust that I am a trustee of, there'd be no money in some of our small schools, because the only reason they exist is because we're able to take money out of our bigger schools. So there is no money for those areas because we're already doing that. So I just want to be careful about opening a can of worms around those conversations where there might not be a full understanding of some of these smaller schools are only being kept open by trusts that are able to do that financially, and certainly not with the money that's being provided to run those schools because of the low levels of funding and that we have in Devon and Cornwall.
I totally agree, Rob. And this is why it's so important that we're moving our services to place-based, so we understand those small schools. I think we do have a good understanding of our small schools and supporting them, and we certainly what we want to do as DCC is work with those trusts to ensure that as many of our schools as possible are sustainable and that we're supporting that. I don't think anybody in here is advocating a blanket approach. It's actually a very localized approach that we need to move towards, and that's why I keep on bringing up this community approach. Who is serving the young people and families in a community? How do we get together to use the resources better? Is my approach.
Thank you. Oh, Mim, you've got your hand up.
Thank you. It was just a question on that, on the report on 2.21. I don't know whether that's just it's about FE safety valve, whether that's just a paragraph that's been in there for a little while, but or whether the plans are reported in next year's. But Petrol are anticipating 248 additional high needs places from this coming September 25-26. And I think like the bit that's reported there has maybe just been there for a little while because I don't know, or is this just purely this academic year and we're not looking at what's forecast for next year?
Yeah, this is the financial year for 24-25. So what you're referring to is the 25-26 element.
So when it says looking for new facilities from 26-27, but I hope they'll be available for 25-26, we've been reporting that our facilities should be available for 25-26, increasing the high needs places by 248.
Yeah, so
I just didn't know whether that could be updated at some point.
Yeah, we can change.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's all the discussion on that. So we need to go back to the noting of these. So I'll take these individually. And please, can you all note the DSG outrun position as set out in the report? Take it you've noted that. B, to note the budget carry forwards for de-delegated and high needs as set out in section 4, table 6. All noted. And C, to note the individual school balance carry forward as set out in section 4, table 7. So I assume all have noted it. Okay, thank you very much. So we will now move on to items for debate and information. Item 11, deaf proportionality. I'll hand over to Fiona for that one.
Thank you, Chair. So I circulated to all members the pupil census data that we have for this year, just so that we can review our figures which feed into the deaf membership for the next academic year. Basically, there's been very little change, so we recommended no change, and I've just received support for the recommendation from members' comments on from the email chain. So basically, just need to ask you to agree that we don't make any change to the primary and secondary membership this year on DEF. Thank you.
So I take it everybody's happy. Gemma?
Sorry, I will just make the point that I have made before,
Yes.
which is that early years is a bolt onto this and it doesn't get considered, and the capacity for funded children has increased massively over the last 12 months. I know it's not part of the regulations. I know it's not going to change anything, but I still want it noted that I don't know who else would be, and I don't yet have a cloning machine, although still working on it. However, there's still only one early years rep for PVI, one for the maintained nursery schools. But from the PVI sector, we are now a much bigger player in the funded places, and that's not considered when looking at the report.
Thank you, Gemma. That has been noted. So, okay, thank you, Fiona. So we now move on to item 12, which is standard.
Yeah, I'm really sorry. Can I just come back? Is
You-
it not come back,
Yeah.
actually? You may, those of you in the room will have picked up that Kelly and I just looked at each other and went, no, we need to look at that, actually. And so if we go away and get people to have a look at that proportionality and potentially bring back some comment for the next DEF, because I think it was the last point, Gemma, actually, that is the number of funded places I think needs to be considered. So I think what we'll do, if with your agreement, Chair, is I will get prepared a proposal to talk about at SFIG and then bring it back to DEF. Is that okay with you? Is that the right way?
It's all to do with the forum regulations.
Yeah.
To how we.
But I wonder whether that's being considered anywhere else nationally, Fiona, is what I'm thinking. And so I can bring it back to DEF, but I think there's some work that needs to be done on that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, standing groups. So can I ask you to receive the minutes of the School Organisation Capital and Admissions Forum? I don't believe there was anything that came out. Sorry, Alex.
Yeah, I do apologise, Chair, but we've moved on past the SFG minutes, I know, but there was one point I just wanted to ask Jack about on SFG minutes, which was auto-enrolment for free school meals, and where we're up to on it, because it's been bypassed.
Thank you, Alex. I have great pleasure. I have great pleasure in reporting, and Denise, just for your information, this is a regular question at SFIG, and for all of us, you know, I've publicly thanked Alex for his diligence around this before, because it's common sense, etc. So where are we? Since the last DEF, I think I reported in the last DEF that we'd commissioned an organisation called BASIS in order to drive this through our political system and ensure that we were able to roll out auto-enrolment of free school meals with a target date of October 25. What I can report to you today, Alex, and I said to you informally that I'll be communicating out to schools and partners around auto-enrolment within the next 2 weeks. And the reason I haven't done it up to now is because I'm just waiting on a final bit of news, and I think it's a really important bit of news. So where are we? We formed a working party. You've heard all that before. We've had regular actions in order to move this through. We started by engaging with our district council colleagues to ensure the data sharing element was done. At the same time, we've also been working with the Department of Work and Pensions, because the council actually has access to the same data internally, but what we needed was permission from the Department of Work and Pensions to use that. it hasn't been signed off by the Department of Work and Pensions yet, and that's the key moment, because if they sign that off, then what we'll be able to do is communicate the next steps to schools, and that will put us absolutely on track to roll out auto enrollment in time for the October census, which is a key date for us all. So it's good news, Alex, and it's going to be good news. I just want it to be the very best news and to communicate that out. I will send out a written submission through DEF, but also to our school partners and other providers that so progress.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we've received the minutes from soccer. I don't believe anybody has anything to raise. No, nothing came out of those. Item 13, there is no correspondence that we are aware of. So item 14 are dates of future meetings, which I would ask you to note. I think on the pack online it only referred you elsewhere, so I have down here Wednesday, 21st of January 2026. We haven't got the November one. Yes, the next one is the 19th of November, and then after that the 21st of January and 18th of March. And with that, I will close the meeting. Thank you very much, everybody.